Welcome to my channel Car Auto, ladies and gentlemen. The Chevrolet Bel Air, introduced in the 1950 model year, represents a significant chapter in American automotive history. In its early incarnation, particularly in 1950, it marked a notable departure from Chevrolet's prior offerings and played a foundational role in what would become a legendary model line for decades to come. The 1950 Bel Air was not a standalone model at the time but a premium trim level of the Chevrolet Style Line Deluxe, standing out primarily due to its unique body style and upscale appointments. It was the first Chevrolet to offer a two-door hardtop configuration, a design that combined the elegance of a convertible with the structural integrity and practicality of a coupe. This concept quickly captured the imagination of the American public, who were increasingly drawn to cars that emphasized both style and innovation in the post-war era. One of the most distinguishing features of the 1950 Chevrolet Bel Air was its pillarless hardtop design. At the time, the automobile industry was rapidly evolving, and automakers were seeking new ways to blend functionality with visual appeal. The hardtop style eliminated the B-pillar, the vertical support between the front and rear side windows, giving the car a sleek, uninterrupted side profile when the windows were rolled down. It was a design cue that evoked the glamour of a convertible without compromising on weather protection or security. This innovation contributed to the Bel Air's popularity and helped set a trend that many other American manufacturers soon followed. Its roofline, complemented by a large wraparound rear window and flowing chrome trim, became a signature element that continued in future Bel Air generations. Under the hood, the 1950 Chevrolet Bel Air came standard with a 216.5 cubic inch inline-six engine, known as the Stovebolt 6. This engine was a reliable workhorse that produced around 92 horsepower and was mated to a 3-speed manual transmission. For many Americans, this powertrain represented a perfect blend of dependability and performance for the time. While it was far from a high-performance machine by today's standards, or even compared to later Bel Air models, the 1950 version prioritized smoothness, longevity, and simplicity, all qualities that appealed to the practical post-war consumer. The car was built on a solid chassis with coil springs in the front and leaf springs in the rear, offering a comfortable ride that suited the wide-open roads of mid-century America. In terms of design, the 1950 Bel Air exemplified the optimism and prosperity that characterized the early 1950s. Its body featured a gently rounded silhouette, chrome accents, and pronounced front fenders that flowed seamlessly into the doors. The grille was wide and horizontal, flanked by round headlights and a substantial Chevrolet emblem in the center, giving the front end a bold but friendly look. The rear fenders were adorned with subtle chrome detailing and bullet-shaped taillights, a preview of the increasingly flamboyant styling that would define American cars in the latter part of the decade. Inside, the Bel Air offered an upscale experience compared to its sibling models. Upholstery options included textured fabrics, vinyl, and tasteful two-tone combinations. The dashboard was symmetrical and featured large, easy-to-read gauges, along with chrome accents and a push-button radio, luxuries for the time that underscored the Bel Air's premium positioning. Marketing for the 1950 Chevrolet Bel Air focused heavily on its modern styling and advanced features, appealing to a burgeoning middle class that craved status as well as reliability. Chevrolet advertisements of the era emphasized the Bel Air's hardtop convertible styling, suggesting that owners could enjoy the best of both worlds, the prestige of a convertible with the comfort of a coupe. This marketing strategy resonated well with buyers and helped the Bel Air gain a reputation for being both aspirational and attainable. It was not the most expensive car on the market, but it offered many of the visual cues and creature comforts that buyers associated with luxury brands, all wrapped up in a Chevrolet package known for affordability and dependability. The release of the 1950 Bel Air also marked the beginning of a shift in how American consumers viewed their vehicles. Cars were no longer seen merely as tools of transportation, they were expressions of personal style, status, and taste. The success of the Bel Air hardtop validated Chevrolet's gamble on more daring, design-forward vehicles and laid the groundwork for what would become one of the most iconic nameplates in automotive history. In subsequent years, the Bel Air would go on to feature more powerful engines, bolder styling, and become a cornerstone of 1950s car culture, particularly with the landmark 1955-57 models that cemented its legendary status. But it all started with the 1950 version, a car that quietly introduced Americans to the concept of accessible luxury and style-forward engineering. Chevrolet's approach to the Bel Air also demonstrated the brand's ability to read the market and respond to changing consumer preferences. In the years following World War II, American society underwent significant transformation. Suburbanization, rising incomes, and a booming economy meant that more people than ever could afford to buy a new car. Chevrolet capitalized on this trend by offering vehicles that were not only affordable and reliable but also desirable. The Bel Air stood out as a symbol of this new era, a time when the automobile was becoming an extension of one's identity and lifestyle. Its success inspired not only future generations of Bel Air models but also pushed other manufacturers to innovate and expand their offerings to meet the evolving expectations of the American driver. Another element that added to the 1950 Bel Air's appeal was its customization potential. Buyers could choose from a range of factory colors, interior trims, and accessories. Optional features such as a heater, radio, whitewall tires, and even a clock allowed consumers to personalize their car in ways that had previously been reserved for more expensive brands. This level of customization helped solidify the emotional bond between car and driver, reinforcing the Bel Air's image as more than just a mode of transportation. It was a personal statement. Despite being relatively conservative in performance, the 1950 Bel Air had an unmistakable aura of grace and poise. It was not built for speed or racing, but rather for cruising the expanding American highways and boulevards in comfort and style. It captured the imagination of a country leader to move forward after years of war and economic hardship. Its graceful lines, solid construction, and thoughtful details resonated with buyers, making it an instant classic. Though it would be overshadowed in later years by more flamboyant models, the 1950 Bel Air holds a unique place in automotive history as the car that started it all for one of Chevrolet's most beloved nameplates. Collectors today view the 1950 Bel Air as a rare and desirable example of early 1950s American design. Restored models are often prized for their originality, attention to detail, and historical significance. While not as flashy or fast as the later Tri-5 Bel Airs, the 1950 model is respected for its pioneering hardtop design and its role in setting the stage for one of the most celebrated car lines in automotive history. For enthusiasts, it represents the beginning of something truly special, a car that dared to blend innovation, style, and accessibility in a way that defined an entire generation of motoring. Let me know if you want this in a different tone, like more technical or more narrative. Please subscribe to my channel Car Auto.